I left the church and I married a woman, and we got married in California during Prop 8. During that time, it wasn't legal federally yet.
Yeah.
And
How old
that
were you
just,
at that time?
how old was I? Gosh, 2008. I don't do math. I was probably 25. I don't
It's
know.
not a quiz. That's okay.
Yeah, 25 sounds about right. I was young, and the funny part was she was also ex-Mormon. And so the way we dated, it was like this double dose of like Mormons date super fast, and then here we got queer folks, lesbians particularly, we date really fast.
Alrighty, it is time to stop hitting snooze and awaken to a life worth being, the fun and inspiring podcast that dives deep into what makes life truly fulfilling. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, a self-proclaimed badass transformational life coach for women over 40. Join me as I explore the extraordinary journeys of ordinary people who've transformed their lives from the inside out. Tune in weekly to uncover the secrets to smashing through your perceived limits and creating a life that's not just well lived, but totally worth being. Hey, welcome to another episode of A Life Worth Being. Today I want to talk about being part of the LGBTQ plus community. I've been a card-carrying member for many, many, many years now. But when I think back to what it was like coming out, for me, I actually had a pretty easy coming out. Come to find out, my mother was also a lesbian, which was no surprise to me. But it did make it a little bit of a softer landing. Now, not everybody has that kind of experience. And sometimes not coming out or staying within is just as difficult as the actual act of coming out. And today's guest knows a little bit, knows a whole lot about both sides of that story. So today, my guest is Kylie Weathers. And Kylie was born a lesbian and raised Mormon. So, okay, there you go. That's the opening line of today's show. So free of church and in the closet meant that she could finally accept herself. She began healing her attachment wounds, started to date herself, and rediscover her worth. Now a certified attachment coach, Kylie created Queerly Attached because attachment trauma affects the queer community on a much deeper level. Kylie coaches queer folks how to date and relate securely attached. Kylie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was actually a really great intro. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell me about this. I know you have a really amazing story. And like I said, coming out or not coming out, staying in is just as painful a lot of times as coming out. So let's kind of start with that as a jumping off point, if you don't mind.
I actually love that as the jumping off point, because what I've been sharing is I think we talk a lot about the coming out and we don't talk enough about the being in. And that is where this attachment trauma is actually occurring in like a double dose. And so for me, growing up Mormon, and if you're not familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's a high demand religion. And my parents were super into it. They were both kind of late in life converts, and they found each other and had 4 kids pretty quickly. And like family forever was the goal. And it's a beautiful goal to think about, wanting to live with your family forever, of course. But as I, kind of was getting older, started to feel a little bit like I'm not sure I fit in that picture. And when I turned 16 years old, met my first girlfriend at band camp, and we had a good run of it until we got caught. And when I got caught, that was like in my timeline, it was just like a kind of a moment of just the world flipped. I honestly have a hard time remembering before it. It was a big imprint. Absolutely, some major attachment wounding happened in that moment. And I had parents who loved me and parents who very much believed that struggling with same-sex attraction was something that I could get past. And so therapy and bishops and lots of repenting and woo, the amount of praying, it just it was a difficult road, but I didn't really ever feel like I had a choice because the other options were, well, I didn't see another option. And so I stayed in the church. I actually served a mission for the church. And as women, we would serve missions for 18 months, and I only made it about 6 because, well, I fell in love with my companion, which, lesbian's gonna lesbian, I say. So it's a long time with just one person. And I went home. And to be sent home from your mission is a pretty big deal. And I felt really alone. And they had advised me in the mission, the leadership had advised me not to share with really anyone, including my parents, what had happened. And so it just became more internalized, right? The amount of internalized homophobia I had at this point was just, I mean, it was absurd. And yet at the same time, because I had been having queer experiences with women, it was also like I was becoming this like gatekeeping lesbian of like what's gay enough, right? And like what's not gay. And so it was just this kind of battle between myself for a long time until I finally just was like, okay, I'm done. And I did. I left the church and I married a woman, and we got married in California during Prop 8. During that time it wasn't legal federally yet.
Yeah.
And
How old were
that
you at
just,
that time?
how old was I? Gosh, 2008. I don't do math. I was probably
This
25.
isn't,
I don't
it's not
know.
a quiz. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't 25 sounds about right. I was young, and the funny part was she was also ex-Mormon. And so
Uh,
the way we dated, it was like this double dose of like Mormons date super fast, and then here we got queer folks, lesbians particularly, we date really fast. And so it was all very fast. And yeah, what the thing was is that about 3 years into the marriage, she decided to go back to that church.
mm,
So then here I was with this other massive point of like, oh, my world has stopped, and this was not expected, and I could never have predicted that outcome.
mm,
And so why I say to folks that like my story is this tale of self-abandonment is because that's exactly what I did in that moment. I think
mm.
I tried to kind of like see if we could make it work. Kind of, we were back for about a month, but it was a no-go. And I was in rural
So she
Georgia.
was in the church and you were not, and so you were trying to make the
For 1
peace.
month. For 1 month, it was like, can we kind of reconcile? And admittedly, this was not a fantastic relationship. I was an anxious, preoccupied, attached individual at this point, right? I know now that she was dismissive, avoidant. So we were already in that push-pull roller coaster dynamic that we see so often in queer relationships. So it wasn't like it was really something that we should probably have been going back to. But for me, the idea of no connection and like it just was black, and I was terrified of what single and queer in rural Georgia while you're closeted, like it didn't feel like a thing that I could even fathom. And I reached out to my family who had pretty much like kind of breadcrumbed me at this point, and I ended up right back in that church a month later. Right
Mm.
back. Right back. But you know what I got was community. I got my family back. I was able to stay besties with my ex. That's what we all want, right? And I got community right there locally. And so it was another big pivot. And yeah, I walked that path for a long time.
So I have a question about going back to the church after all of that. And like you said, being breadcrumbed, I love that expression. Um, was it an easy going back? I mean, did they
Oh, I love
welcome
that
you with
question.
open arms or did you have to go through some like reinitiation process?
So
I
I
don't know. I'm
love
just,
you asked that. Nobody's asked me that yet. So okay. Mhm.
yeah, I'm
Here's
just
the
like,
answer.
oh,
So
I'm glad I
I
went back to church.
I
I
kind
can't
of
believe they're like,
joke.
oh, great, come on back to the team.
Yeah, no. Well, okay. So this was the thing. We were in this small, tiny town. There's not a bunch of Mormon churches to go to. There's just the one with
Yeah.
likely on a good day 80 folks there. This was not
Um,
like a thriving congregation. And so she returned first to that ward. And, they didn't want anyone to know like what was going on there, of course.
mm,
And then I came the next month. And the way I tell it is I was there, but I was pissed to be there because
mm.
I had what I had coined a spiritual moment that led me back there. But I was so ticked that that was what the answer was. I was so mad that God was like, go back there right? That's how I had interpreted it. And so I wasn't happy to be there. But I knew at that time, it felt like I was meant to be there. It just felt like if I didn't get back now, I was going to miss, it felt like missing something, that I was going to miss something. I don't know. So it took me a while to kind of get past the like anger. And yeah, I had to go through disciplinary counsel, because when I'd been sent home from my mission, I had started the disciplinary counsel there. So we had to have a back end. Um, Fortunately, again, small, tiny ward, they needed people to do these callings. They needed leadership. So it probably should have taken a year to get back in. I think they had me ready to go within 6 months. So
Fast track.
it was this like prodigal son return. No, they were very welcoming, but we weren't sharing our story. I wasn't
Right.
there saying I was a lesbian and now I'm not. Not to those folks, right? Because it was still just too embarrassing. We like, it felt so like I had made such an awful, sinful choice. And gosh, you ask about the going back within 2 months. No, within 3 months, I'm dating my son's father. Right? Like it just, I set my sight on, I'm going to do the Mormon path, and that's what we're going to do. Right? This
Wow.
other thing, it can be quiet, but the church is true, and I can somehow make this quieter. And so when I left the church again in 2018, fortunately, with my co-parent, he also left. So I wasn't dealing with mixed faith marriage. We were already dealing with mixed orientation marriage, which is hard enough.
I love that. I love that
But
mixed
when I left,
orientation.
then I say that the first time I left the church, it was because it was too hard to be gay. And the
Mhm.
second time I left the church is because it wasn't true. And the not being true part is why it's easy to not stay in it. But it takes a lot, because being raised in something like that, I mean, from 3 years old and on, you're being taught these principles, and we're being taught to speak about it and share about it. And the family thing is a big deal. So to be gay meant to lose my family. And, I'm right here on earth, and I'm a lesbian, and I have lost my family. And that
Really?
makes me sad, because that's not my choice.
Mm.
It's not my
Yeah.
choice. I'm still getting breadcrumbed, it's not what
Yeah.
it was. The return meant having my full family back. Then me marrying a man was, of course, like, wow, amazing, right?
Right.
And then we had our son. So, um, fortunately for me, I was able to kind of break out of the like, this is the one true church thing. And then as soon as that came off, my husband at the time says, like, it was like a cloak just came off me, and he was like, oh, here you are. Not that I got more gay, it was that I got more self-aware, and like
Mhm.
I trusted myself again. So in fact, our marriage improved after that.
So
It
you both
really
left
did.
church together.
We did. We left. Yep.
Yeah.
I had read some things first. I shared them with him, asked him if he'd consider, and he was like, give me some time to think on it. And pretty quick, it was like, oh yeah, that's cool. He was fine. He was like, he wasn't really into it like I was. I was very into it.
Mm.
His was more
You
kind
had
of
a
like, this is
different
what we do.
Yeah, you had a different motivation to be into it.
There you go.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it like that. Thank you. I really haven't. I'm gonna write that down. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, God, that's a fascinating story. And, the fact that you said you were born lesbian, but you were raised by Mormons, you might as well say I was raised by wolves or something.
Yep.
And that, not that Mormons are wolves by any means, but it's like you're raised in a way that, pushes that your true self aside.
Yeah.
And, the constant battle, the internal battle, is devastating. Um,
I
you
that's
know,
I that's why queerly attached, because to
Mhm.
me, that's not an experience that anyone else is out here having unless you're queer. And so like I'm talking like this level of like self-rejection, right? Like this taught to self-abandon. It's queer attachment trauma. It's queer attachment trauma. And what I have decided is this queer attachment trauma is actually what's stealing and like robbing us of queer joy, right? Like queer joy
Mhm.
to me is just to be able to exist as we are. Can we
Yeah.
please just exist and belong as we are? That would be fantastic. But
Mhm.
why is that like something we're like constantly pursuing? Like that's messed up. Like it
Mhm.
should be to exist is a right. And it is stripped of us when we are told by society that this is wrong or it's gross or it's whatever. And then God is saying that you are fundamentally wrong to the core and going to hell, depending on which religion you're in. And then your parents are telling you, we can pray this thing away. We
Right.
can work really hard at this to get it right. And so it makes so much sense to me. One, that I'm a perfectionist. Two, that I'm a people pleaser, right? These are all things I
Mhm.
was before healing my own attachment wounds. But it makes sense that these choices I made were absolutely just disconnecting from self to stay connected to others, because the risk and fear of rejection and self-abandonment, or not, sorry, let me say that again. The fear and the risk of rejection and abandonment just like scares the hell out of us. And our subconscious is like, yo, here are some strategies to make sure that doesn't happen. So try these things and you'll be safe quicker. But like, we don't want to just survive, man. So it's literally like a reprogramming of our of subconscious to be like, okay, thank you for what you've done.
Mhm.
I'm a safe adult here, ready to handle these adult things, and I would like to take over. And we're going to practice secure attachment. It's a practice.
Just like anything is a practice, right?
Exactly.
Meditation, anything, mindfulness. I mean, it's all about. And when we were talking before we started about the fact that I work with horses
Mhm.
and using them as my coaching partners in a feedback loop, how they can see through all of that stuff, right? It's like all of those things that we've done to make ourselves appear acceptable and safe and whatever, when
Mhm.
we're really just lying to ourselves. Horses
Yep.
are like, excuse me, right there. Stop it. I can see that.
Lying to ourselves and others, though, right? Because that's what I've
Oh,
been saying.
absolutely.
People
Yeah.
pleasing is manipulative. It
Yeah.
is. We're trying to manipulate the way that they view us, right? We are
Yes.
fearful of the judgment of whatever we're gonna say, and so then we don't say, right? And it's not fair. We're asking to be in connection with each other, and we're saying that we want to love each other at our deepest and at our most core, but then we're not showing that. And also, do we really know what that is? Right? I didn't. I did not until I started learning about attachment theory, understood that I was absolutely an anxious, preoccupied individual who was self-sacrificing all the time because my need for connection was so high. And so when we got out of the church, and then pretty soon was like, okay, I really am a lesbian. Again, I am so fortunate that I married a good man, and he's a fantastic father. And now I have this amazing co-parent, and I could see his apartment from here. And my son just runs between us, and it's beautiful. But that's not because we don't have conflict. Like, we do have conflict. And in fact, we have more now, of course, since this co-parenting situation. But fortunately for that guy, I love communication. Like, I am all about just, we can absolutely connect through this. And if we're lucky, we will, and then we'll get to know each other better. So because we aren't being real with each other to avoid conflict, we're actually not having the self-discovery and like partnership discovery that we should be having all the time.
Mm.
Like, we would be in such deeper founded levels if we weren't just skipping the conflict.
Yeah.
We're too
Yeah.
scared.
We need conflict. I mean, you can't avoid conflict. And without conflict, you can't have resolution. So just what you said.
We try. We try. I mean, you see it. You see it. I don't know. I mean, how are you in partnership right now?
No.
You're not
No.
me either. I say I'm securely single.
Right. And that's how
Yeah.
I feel too. I don't feel like I need someone to complete me. For
Yes.
many years, I did feel like, oh, I have to be in a relationship, serial monogamy and all that kind of stuff or whatever. But yeah, I'm like, I have crafted and created a comfortable sense of self
Mm.
so that I love where I am and who I am. And if someone comes along that is also at that same level or at least close, then great. But in the meantime, I'm a good, and I I like my life. So I love my life. What can I say?
The thing you said there is exactly how I end mine. And if someone comes along, which of course I'm not hoping for that, I think that's kind of low vibration stuff, but I know that my path is going to look this way. And so, sure, if I look over and someone else is walking their path similarly, sure, it would probably make sense for us to, if we're vibing, why not? But I know that I'm not self abandoning anymore, and I don't want to date people who do either.
Yeah.
That's when we get into the incongruency.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm significantly older than you, I'm guessing. But I mean, it takes a long time. That journey is a long path, and it's not forward always. It's sideways and it's backwards and
Exactly.
it's around in circles. And, that self work, it is work, but if you do the work, it works.
Yep. Well, the path you mentioned, like you said, yeah, it's not straight, but the things that we were missing before, why we couldn't handle like the spirals and the spins and the turns we didn't see, is because we didn't have boundaries. I mean, flat out, we didn't have boundaries. So I think of boundaries as like guardrails. And so I
Yeah.
like that you mentioned the path isn't straight, because now I'm seeing it as like, yeah, of course we can handle it now because we can see where the path is because of these guardrails that are keeping us safe and secure. Right?
Yeah.
Boundaries they're not restrictions or walls. Prentice Hemphill is someone I quote often. They say that boundaries are just the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
Oh, I like that. That's a
Right?
great
It's so
quote.
that we
Yeah.
both can be loved and be safe. Like that, we need that. Anything else is like codependency and
Mhm.
enmeshment. And yeah, I have a new appreciation for time and energy as resources. And so um, a lot of my past, the way I would kind of victimize my own self with my story would just be like, just how much time I wasted, and like, just that. You mentioned age. I'm 41. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I sure wish I didn't have like self actualization at 40. I mean, it would have been great to have that at 20, right? But
Yeah.
we
We
also are
all
both,
did.
yeah, it would have been amazing. But I do know like the next 40, next 20, they're not going to look anything like that. Like they
Yeah.
just can't. It's not that I'm not that person. It's that I have integrated those parts, those Kylie, all those inner hurt teenagers, children, all those things. We can't move forward without them. But moving forward, not as a whole, I don't want that anymore. It's too
Yeah.
fragmented. It's too painful.
It is painful. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it keeps us stuck. And like you said, that the victimization and self-victimization and all of that stuff. And it's very freeing. Like you said,
Mm.
at whatever age we come to those realizations, it's a relief,
Yeah.
to, like you said, taking off that cloak and being like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one of the, I actually, attachment was just so much part of it, but the other thing that I always want to add is the untethered journey. Have you read it? Untethered
Yeah.
Soul. Sorry, the
Yeah.
untethered soul.
Yes.
That book,
It's
combining
amazing.
it with this attachment thing, has just like, now I'm like, I get emotions and thoughts and this idea of like observing the voices, right? And instead of like believing and judging and just being curious, has it's a freedom. It's a freedom, and it's also so much more quiet up here. And I am an over processor, okay? Like, but it is so quiet. And it's nice to be able to like actually like take in what's going on around you, and like be able to pause and notice a feeling, and actually then know how to sit with it, so that we're not just like pushing it down and then trying to deal with it later, and now we're sick because our body's screaming. Like, it takes a little pause, and then we definitely want to go back to the breath. It sounds like you have some good practices. I love breath work, but
Mhm.
really the power that we have, it's just remembering that our locus of control is so much smaller than we realize. And actually that means we have less of a burden. Like, we are burdening ourselves with all the grasps that like control. Like, it's a different way of being, which is what we are, right? We're human beings. So the human doing thing is just like times of old. I'm not down for it.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I like my coaching motto, and the name of my podcast is A Life Worth Being, because that's what
Oh
we are.
yeah.
We are being.
Yes.
And I love turning it into an observational moment rather than a reactionary moment, and getting into your body. When I work with horses and clients, um, we spend so much time in our head, and horses don't. They're constantly in their bodies because they're prey animals, and they're
Mm-hmm.
every cell in their body is concerned with survival.
Mm-hmm.
So, when clients are reacting a certain way, or I see I'm like, okay, something's bubbling up here. I ask them to go back into their body. Where do you feel it somatically? Where do you,
Yes.
because everything that we've been through, we store in
Yep.
these vessels,
Yep.
that are getting us through the world. And it's a big deal. And it
Mhm.
also helps, like you said, with building that that observational muscle and
Yep.
that awareness muscle,
Yep.
because it is really important to do that. And like you said, once you do, stuff becomes quieter.
Mm. I remember the first day I noticed the quiet, I almost was like, something must be wrong. And then I
Is
realized
something
like, oh,
broken up
is
here?
this contentment? Is this what this is? Like, oh my gosh. No, you mentioned the going into the body. I do the same with my clients, right? It is, I mean, let's talk about feelings. They're sensations. Like
Mhm.
it feelings are somatic. So we have to go into the body because that's the body, the feeling, right? They're sending a message. So anytime we're just like, don't care, whatever, you cause me too much anxiety, I don't want to deal with you right now. Anytime we're doing that, we're just basically saying to the messenger, I don't care what the need is. Because that's what it's trying to say is there's a need that's not being met,
Mhm.
or there's a boundary that's been crossed, or maybe there's one that needs to be laid down, or this is a chance to uphold a boundary and we're not taking it. Right? It's just a message. And this going into the body, I call it a sacred sitting. I really feel
Mhm.
that way about it now. Like to communicate with your body is so cool. And I'm talking to someone, I know I didn't share it here, but before we were talking that, I had a spinal cord injury. And so I was disconnected from my body for sure for about 9 years because I hated it. It
Mhm.
betrayed me. It hurt me. It keeps hurting me. Like I couldn't get in touch. Right. To be now in touch with my body, nothing has changed in my condition, but my pain has changed. And it's because I think about it different. And I would have knocked you out if you had said that to me 2 years ago. But I believe this now because I have practiced it. Yes, I am still a chronic pain person, right? I still have that. But man, I'm not at war with my body about it. And there's an acceptance to it. Grief is still there, but it's not wishing for it to be something else. Right? It's not about like letting it go. It's just like, it doesn't need to be anything else. This is what my body is. And I love and accept myself as I am. And that is with a body that has this condition. Right. So to be in love with my body like this is so different. It's a beautiful experience. So yes, I'm with you. I love guiding clients back into the body because it's almost sad how disconnected we are.
Yeah, disconnected. And because when you ask somebody, what are you feeling? And they'll say something like, they'll give you a word,
Hmm.
sadness.
Hmm.
What does sadness feel like? Well,
Hmm.
sadness. What is that? How does that, what is it? Describe it in and
Hmm.
then it's like, oh,
Hmm.
okay. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. So I actually encourage. I love that take. Here's my take: is all I want is one word when I ask you what you feel,
Oh.
because anything that you say beyond sad, for instance, if you
Mhm.
say I feel sad because it's like I just whenever you anything beyond that is just thinking. I don't want your thoughts on this feeling. I just want to know what is it, and then they say like, right, sad, and then we go into the body. Let's go sit with sad. Let's go feel like what it
Yes.
feels like to be with sad, right? But the I think what happens is when we feel the emotion, we add our thought. And so I say
Yeah.
like emotion plus thought equals thinking, and now you're in suffering. Like that's going to last forever because our thoughts will punish us as long as we allow them. you know?
Mhm.
So we want to pull the thoughts off the stage and just I feel this, right? You can't tell me sad. If I were to be like sad,
Right.
sad, 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 like you don't know what that means, right? But if we describe the sensations of the body feel like, now we're talking the language of emotions.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. I love that you do that with your clients as well because it's so
Yes.
important.
I think it's basic. I don't know that I'm going to say it. I don't know. I think every coach should be doing somatic work.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up your excuse me, your injury and how it's affected you and how you've
Yeah.
gotten beyond it because you were talking before we started about, the anniversary of the incident. Uh, and I did ask you what happened, and you told me, and I was like, wow, okay, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
pretty awful. And you can share that or not. But now when you have that anniversary come up, you said, okay, I'm not gonna at the 10th anniversary, I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Oh, yeah. I'll share about that.
yeah.
Yeah, so I had a spinal cord injury. It was out of nowhere. It was unexpected. It was just literally I woke up and it was an insane beyond that. The next 9 years were just filled with, lots of questions and surgeries and pain meds. And such loss. I had a 6-month-old at the time. My husband and I at the time were only married for a year. So it was this time that wasn't meant to be that's for sure.
Mhm.
And so I also was an athlete and I was a recreation therapist and I loved my job. I loved to play. I expected myself to be this mom that was on the floor playing and like, wrestling. And so the loss became so much greater because of what I made it mean.
Mm.
And that's what it took me into the 9th year to learn, because the anniversary would roll around because, I didn't just wake up, right? There were symptoms, there were
Mm.
things, and I had started talking to doctors and I wasn't being believed. There was a lot going on. And so as Facebook starts to remind me of that, because I didn't experience that way the first year. It wasn't until after it all that I was like, oh shit, yeah, we were talking back in January. Why did this happen in April? Right. So
Yeah.
basically, from about February on, my mood, just everything, just from February to April, like just awful, just reliving it, resharing it, it's a rare thing that happened. It's called Cauda equina syndrome. It's extremely rare. Not a lot of people know about it. So there's some advocacy there as well. But it was also just this reliving. And I don't know why I was doing it, but subconsciously I needed to protect something. That's my only answer to that. But by the 9th year, I just could feel this was tearing my body apart. And I felt very in opposition to it. And, I still have all this back stuff. And I've had it for 10 years. And if I'm fighting with my body, it's not going to be great years from now. Right. So I knew something had to change. And so I did read that book, The Untethered Soul, that kind of opened that path for me. And so as the 10th year rolled through, it wasn't that I didn't think of it, but there was like no preoccupation about it. And the pain wasn't there. Like, I mean, the emotional pain was different. And even when the day arrived, that the day arrived, came and went and nothing. And I forgot and I didn't post about it. And that was like the first time in 9 years. And it was like, wow, this is a different life. And it was because I had understood, yes, I experienced a loss, but I continued losing because of how I was thinking about it. And there was grief in that. There was grief in understanding what I had given up for the last 9 years because I did. I made myself lose more than I needed to. And yeah, it's a very different existence down to the way that I interact with my son. Embodiment, like mind, body, spirit, like all in whole. That's how we're meant to be. That's the life worth being in,
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, that's an incredible journey, and
Thank you
painful
for
one and traumatic, but I love how you have, just come into yourself,
Mhm.
literally and figuratively.
Thank
And
you.
I would like to just quickly sort of talk a little bit about your coaching practice and your
Sure.
your business, Queerly Attached.
Yeah, I love that. So queerly attached. I was certified in integrated attachment theory in 2022, but I was still myself in an up and down relationship. So I wasn't like quite. It still hadn't clicked. And for me, I say it's because I needed this piece with the emotions and the thoughts. And so after I broke free of this trauma bond, remember that gal I talked about
Mhm.
at 16 years old? Yeah, we were trauma bonded and this was a person who kind of came in and out of my life all this time. And so when I left the church, left the closet, first call. Didn't know it was a trauma bond at the time. Thankfully, I was learning about attachment theory as that relationship was beginning. And so I had a lot of significant growth and healing through that.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to remove myself from it. And it was that final piece of like fear of being alone, and I really had to just leap into the darkness. I cannot tell you that I did that without fear. I was courageous, which means I did it fearfully. But it was a leap. And when I came out the other side, I was like shocked to realize that outside of that connection, my life was beautiful,
Mm.
and that connection had overshadowed so much. And it really was this like, oh my gosh, like my co-parent lives, 2 buildings over, and my son and I have this fantastic relationship. And like it was this beautiful thing. And I began understanding more about my own attachment styles, that I started to see like this is everywhere in our community. Like it's everywhere. And a lot of these jokes that like I have this look. I don't know if you're going to be able to say it. It says, nothing says love like two dates, one truck. It's a U-Haul mug and it's got lesbian stuff all over it. It says U-Haul,
I love it.
authorized lesbian. It's hilarious, right? But do you know, I say I'm a victim of U-Hauling and it's because of my attachment style, right?
Right?
Right? Like we moved so fast. We go at the speed of light. And then we have these awful conflicts that we don't know how to navigate. And then we don't know to repair at all, but we sure try. It's just these up and down. And so many of my clients, that's the story. So
Yeah.
what I say is I created Queerly Attached for the, oh, I'm going to get emotional there. I created it for the Kylie back then when her wife left her. If I had known that there is a coach out there who could have helped me in that moment, I don't think I would have gone back to the church. If I'd
Yeah.
had someone to show up and say, oh, no, 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 let me explain to you why it looks like this and feels like this. So Queerly Attached, I launched in April and I started building it in April and then launched in June at my very first Pride event. I had a table and everything. I'd never been to Pride myself. And here I was with my very queer business. And it's been amazing. I started running local workshops here in Kansas City. They're selling out. I've moved stuff online, starting to hold workshops online right now. I just finished a presentation. I was invited to join a Queer Joy Summit, which has just been so cool to be part of. That's going to be coming up. I can leave you details for that probably, but
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
in all, it has been amazing to see. Really, as a coach, I think it's like we get compared to therapists a lot. I'm sure you deal with that. And I say the best part about being a coach is I'm not a therapist, right? I'm
Right.
not. We are different things, and I think in coaching, it's over here in therapy, you're going to like go through your story. We're going to look at it and we're going to go through it, right? I love therapy. I go every week at 3 at Tuesdays. Okay. But in coaching, we're going to look at writing the new story. And I've got the practice plan, right? And you want to practice this thing. All right, let's go work it out. And I'm only a few steps ahead of you, right? You heard this is all new. These are things that I've been learning and growing, only a few steps ahead. But I do know that I have earned secure attachment and it has changed my life down to every connection that I have. And I am securely single and have been so for the last year. You know, old Kylie, ooh, we would have already been done through so many, right?
Yeah.
Just to be in the thing. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I hype about it all the time. You can follow me at Queerly Attached on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Facebook. I also have a private Facebook group. It's called Secure Connections, and there's about 80 of us right now. And
Awesome.
we held a Zoom group last night on how to date secure, and it was good. It's been fun. I really enjoy talking about this stuff. So I love that
Oh,
you had
I'm
me
so
on.
happy that you were available to be on the podcast, and I love what you've created, and that you're building this huge, well, growing community, and bringing that awareness to, especially to the lesbians and the queer folks, because we do unsecurely attach a lot.
Mhm.
It's just, I think, when you come out and you're like, oh my God, I'm out. And like, now what do I do? You had some other factors involved there too, but then it's like, oh, how do I fit into this community? And oh my God. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it just
Um,
adds a whole new layer of insecurity, and there are so many late in life lesbians. There's like
yes.
whole groups of them, and a
Yeah.
lot of them are struggling coming into the community, not feeling part of something. And gosh, I would those were the ones I wish, like, just come right here first, just right out of the
Yeah.
closet. You stop here. We're gonna get you all set up, right? And we just but it's been fun also too. I actually coached two exes. They had just split, and you know what? They actually very gay, got back together, but it's looking differently. And they're telling
Mm,
me how different the conflict is looking and feeling. And even when they do, like, you're not perfect. I'm not saying I'm never using an insecure attachment strategy. I am
yeah.
currently with my family. I am very avoidant, right? I
Mhm.
have fear of abandonment, the total loss. If I were to say to them, this hurts and I don't feel safe being vulnerable with you. That's it. That's all I need to say.
Yeah.
No finger pointing, just me
Yeah.
describing. But I'm afraid of the outcome. So I'm working personally on detaching from that outcome. The only thing we can plan for is not what to expect. We want to plan for what do we want to feel, right? What do
Mhm.
I want to feel during it? And so that's something I'm working on getting stabilized behind. So this thing isn't just for relationships. It's going to go down every line of connection that you have because
Yeah.
attachment, it's part of our very system. It's built into us. We're meant to do it. We are like the only species on this planet that is doing it in this way. And it's such a beautiful gift. I'm like, we just don't have to fuck it up so bad. So I don't know if we can talk like that on here, but that's the main message. I'm always like hashtag fucking lesbians. That's my thing.
Exactly.
So, I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite on. This was really fun. I would love to, we should swap mics. Okay. Cause I do have a podcast coming out.
I know. I
yeah.
just going to mention that as well. And I know you're getting your mic underneath you and
I like that. Yeah.
Solid footing. But yeah, I'd love to be on your show once you get up and running. And thank you so much for your time today. I mean, this has been amazing. I love hearing about what you're doing and how you've overcome so much stuff and just being a secure person, just being secure, having a secure attachment with yourself.
Yeah. Secure attachment with yourself. That's it. It's that. Anytime that we're in these like anxious spaces, think about it like this. If I'm over here anxiously attached to something, it means I'm avoidantly attached here. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a good, like, okay, let's come back home. Right. It's just a path. It's just coming back home. That's all we're doing. We're just teaching you to stay within. Right. So
get your ruby red slippers out, click them together 3 times and say, there's no place like home. Okay. I had to have.
Yeah. There you go. No place like home. And I like it. I'm from Kansas, so I'll take it.
There you go.
Well, thanks, Sue.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Kylie, for being here today. And, for those of you out there that are struggling with coming out or staying in or doing whatever, I hope this has been a bit of an awakening for you. And I really appreciate you listening, not just this week, but every week. And if this has been helpful to you, or it might be helpful to someone else, please share this episode. Give us a rating. This is how we stay alive as podcasters. Give us a review, give us a rating, and join us next week because who knows who I'll have on. But Kylie, thank you again. And I look forward to being on your show and continuing to follow you and what you're doing. And just keep doing what you're doing, girl. It's awesome.
I appreciate it. I like that. I'll take it. I like it.
All right.
All right. Well, good to be on. I'm going to have you on. Mine's just called Queerly Attached Podcast. So you'll be hearing from me. Okay. All right.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Life Worth Being. I hope you found it fun and inspiring. And to avoid a bad case of FOMO, please be sure to click that subscribe button. If you love what you heard today, please share it with a friend and then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and return the love with a wonderful review and 5-star rating. It would truly mean the world to me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and on my website. Links below in the show notes. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week for more fresh insights on awakening a life worth being.